Welcome to Command Control Power, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. For over a decade, we've delivered weekly episodes filled with epic tech support stories, troubleshooting insights, discussions about managing clients and businesses, and interviews with industry colleagues and vendors, all tailored for our pro listeners. We also offer exclusive content through Patreon. This private podcast feed is designed specifically for IT professionals, providing valuable advice and guidance on tackling the more complex aspects of running your practice, working with clients and employees, and managing device fleets. With a modest monthly contribution, you'll gain access to a wealth of advanced Apple expertise, meaningful connections, and a community driven by a shared passion for Apple technology. Visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support to learn more. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power. Thank you all for joining us, and be sure to tune in to the live stream if you're a Patreon supporter. Jerry has the classic old man yells at cloud backdrop, which is, I think that predated, as Sam puts it, like pointing up to the cloud, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was just the Simpsons predicting the future again, although of course they're talking about like just an old man yelling at a cloud, like as pointless as that is. But it works in today's world with our clients who call us and yell about things not syncing. And have you had that happen lately, Jerry? Yeah.
What makes me think of The Simpsons most recently, as I mentioned to you before we started the show, is I have an implant being put in. First one. And so that's a good business. An implant in the United States can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, depending on where you're going. And that includes everything from the manufacturing of the tooth to the implant. But when they were doing a color match, I told the dentist that if she could go for a Simpsons yellow to match the rest of my teeth, I think that was, so that got a laugh out of her. Nice. And at the top of the show, I just want to remind everybody, gals and guys, make sure if you're of that age, go for your routine colon scan, whatever that includes. Colonoscopy, these are things that through modern science, we're able to take care of these days and keep on. So don't wait, don't put it off, don't be scared. There's nothing to it. And it's just something you got to do.
And get some nice crackers at the end once you wake up. So it's all worth it.
Yeah, no, it's not like giving blood, Sam, where they give you coffee and donuts. It's not like that. There is another Homer Simpson donuts. Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. People make a big deal out of it because it sounds wild. Yeah, but it's not a big deal, and it's a good thing.
It's a good PSA. I appreciate that.
Take care of our listeners.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, my wife had one not that long ago, and it's not my first rodeo. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Good for you.
Yeah. That was a hooray for Jerry.
Nice.
I can't get over your background, though. It's making me laugh every time I look at it.
There you go. Much better.
Yes, Sam won't be distracted. Interestingly, I had Adam Angst on the show not that long ago, and he was talking about backups, and that was the general theme. And he was talking about how he uses Super Duper. And I think everybody here uses Carbon Copy Cloner. We're big fans of that program. We've had Mike Bombick on the show a number of times. So I think that's the equivalent to being like used to be a Ford or a Chevy man. Yeah, are you a Ford man or a Chevy man? So I think I'm a Carbon Copy Cloner man. But interestingly, if you open up Carbon Copy Cloner, the latest version, there is a thing in there under utilities where, and I never saw this before, there's an option to delete a stubborn file or folder. And I have no idea when they added that, but I looked at that and I said, ooh, I don't have reason to use that today, but you can go right in there and whack a file. There's those rare occasions where like a client comes to you and they can't get rid of the file and you go into terminal and you do your terminal voodoo and it still is there for whatever reason. It just got really munged up. So you could download the free trial of Carbon Copy Cloner for a moment on the client's machine, whack the file, and then remove it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great PSA too. I had no idea that they added that feature. I've had that problem, and actually I can understand why they would add it to Carbon Copy Cloner, because I think that where I've seen this with a really stubborn file in the past was from a clone, like Carbon Copy Cloner being used to clone the startup disk to an external SSD or something like that. And the file was a crash plan application or something like that, or server. I can't remember which component of crash plan it was. But it ended up in the trash because it was on a clone in a safety net, eventually deleted. Long time since they've ever used crash plan. And yet this crash plan app is in the trash and could not be deleted. And I can imagine this probably would have worked, it sounds like. So it's a good one to keep in mind for sure.
I don't know how long it's been there, but it was news to me.
I thought you mentioned recently another, maybe it wasn't Carbon Copy Cloner. Was it a Backblaze feature? Do you have a PSA about a feature to something about cloud storage? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, Jerry, not too long ago to us.
What did Jerry say about that? I blank.
I think it was pre-colonoscopy, so you don't remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll take credit for this PSA then, because if you don't remember it anyway. So there was something about, I can't remember if it was Carbon Copy Cloner or Backblaze, where you could have it download the cloud storage files temporarily so that they could be backed up using Backblaze. Do I have that right, Sam? Does that ring a bell?
Don't ask me about the details, Joe. I just know that it involved Backblaze.
I could have sworn this would have been the PSA. Let me see here. So because this is actually related to a topic that we also talked about with Adam Angst and something I wanted to bring up here.
Who knows now? Go for it, Joe. What do you see?
No, I'm poking around all my apps. I thought Jerry was going to have this at the ready. Okay, so
this does not ring a bell. I'm sorry. You must. This be some other podcast with some other tech guys, because it wasn't me.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was my other podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe that.
Show.
Yeah. Do you have this, Sam?
Backblaze, backup iCloud Drive.
Yes, I think that was it. So what is that?
Now I know what you're talking about, for goodness sakes.
Okay, go ahead. PSA. No, you run with it. I'm still
it's a help document that we'll put in the show notes, where if you have optimized storage on your Mac, guess what, folks? Backblaze will not back up files that aren't there. How shocking. So you need to disable that. Now, in some cases, there's those edge cases where you can't do that because they've already filled up their drive with other gobbledygook. So you'd never want to be caught in a situation like this where you've given your client Backblaze to back up their files, yet they're in an optimized storage capacity. So you need to do a disclaimer, generate a piece of paper, have them sign off on it, that in the event of a hard drive malfunction or extreme loss of data, we cannot guarantee, we know that Backblaze can't pick it all up because it's not on your computer. It's in the, as Sam would say, in the cloud.
Yeah.
You knew this, Sam, because Joe and I talked about this a little bit during our private show that you're not really part of, but we're starting a new podcast.
But somehow Sam had the note that triggered Jerry's memory. So I don't know what's going on here.
Sam said in the cloud, and that's what did it. I should have looked at the sign
behind you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do this.
So Backblaze has this knowledge base article, like you mentioned, where they give instructions for, hey, if you want us to capture this data, you need to have it on your Mac, at least temporarily. So they basically walk you through turning off optimized cloud storage. Right? It's the whole gist of it.
Yep.
So I do that typically for clients in general. Like you said, if they have enough space, that's probably the way it should be set up. But in those cases where they don't have enough space, I'm not really actually sure what this will do. Backblaze is saying, oh, just turn off optimized Mac storage. That's great.
No, but you're right, Joe. By the way, Sam, this is a hooray for Joe's story, because when I told him about that, he said, oh, I do that anyway with my clients.
I always do that. Yeah, I go into iCloud settings. And
what I'm saying, if they're at or near capacity, by you turning that on, iCloud's going to push back and throw up an error. And it's going to say, hey, we can't do this.
So what's the Backblaze solution then? Is there something
There isn't a solution.
That's my point too.
Okay.
So
Good
it's
PSA,
a good idea.
everybody.
Turn off this feature so that your stuff can download temporarily and then be backed up, but actually you don't have enough space for it anyways. Then again, maybe they should specify this, because you can just manually download. Now you can go into iCloud and you can just click the cloud icon to have it download like the really important files or folders. And then now those are backed up. And realistically, like, probably shouldn't have that feature turned on if you have enough space. And if you don't have enough space, then this doesn't really help you. So it's still a tricky thing. And this is why my advice to clients is always buy enough storage for what you need, for the files you have.
But this protects us, this information out there, because it's obviously, anyone who's listening, when the fact that we pointed this out, they're like, oh, yeah, of course. But you don't think about that until it's too late. And the client says, I want to get my files back. And it was like, no problem. We're great. Yeah. We set you up with Backblaze. And then you look in and the files aren't there. And then you don't want to be in that position.
Then they'll be on iCloud. Hopefully it's still not a catastrophic loss. But if they got a bright idea, like I had this problem and I did this and then I deleted stuff from iCloud to free up space, you did what, and so, there's a chance that they could get themselves into trouble. I like having these kinds of things I can send out, and this is not my information. This is from the vendor. This is from Backblaze. So it's still a good PSA. And I found the thing that for some reason, I conflated these two. So Carbon Copy Cloner also has this feature. So in the task settings, when you go to advanced and you go to file copying settings, they have a checkbox: temporarily download cloud-only files to make a local backup. That's really interesting. Temporarily download cloud-only, like which cloud? I don't know if they're supporting just iCloud or also Dropbox. And now that it's got a copy, it's going to back it up. Okay, now purge that file. Download the next file. Now that you've got that locally, back that up to the Backblaze data center.
But if they don't have room, it can't do this.
But that's why with Carbon Copy Cloner, temporarily download, like the fact that it says temporarily, for all I know, it's just toggling that setting and then toggling it back after the backup. So I don't know what it's doing, and there's no info thing on there I can see, but I'm going to have to go into help and explore that, because that would be a major advantage if it can work around the fact that they may not have storage.
Can't do it, Sam. Okay. You report back to us, Joe.
Oh, maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's something to look into. So here's the other thing too, though, isn't it getting harder to position the role of backup versus syncing? Because I used to tell clients, don't just trust iCloud, because all your photos are in iCloud, and sure.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I do have an update on the Carbon Copy Cloner data, because I was doing some Googling while we're talking here.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So when the settings enabled, CCC will temporarily download cloud-only files, which we know, that are not yet on the destination.
Which cloud?
We're going with, it's iCloud. So
it is iCloud. Okay.
And after copying the temporarily downloaded files, CCC will evict the files to free up space that they consumed. CCC attempts to retain no more than 100 files and no more than 2 gigs of temporarily downloaded content at a time.
Oh, that's pretty smart. Yeah.
Look at that.
There you go. So again, Backblaze maybe has a little bit of room to try to mimic that feature, because again, pointing people to an article is one thing, but realistically, that's not going to solve it. They're going to need to go through and iterate through all of their cloud files to make sure they're backed up to another location, which is why, again, I go back to, do we really need to worry about this? The prerequisites for backing up your stuff is enough space locally, number one, and number two, set up Backblaze or whatever else. Otherwise, you're just relying on iCloud. But my point is, is that a problem anymore? iCloud has the files. There is a feature where you can roll back, at least within the last 30 days. I'm not saying I'd recommend no need for backup, but in practical terms, isn't it hard to sell this to clients when you're trying to make this distinction between sync versus backup? Or all it really comes down to is it's the 30-day window. If you don't discover that you've deleted the wrong photo or all your photos or the wrong files or whatever within 30 days, you've probably lost the data unless you have your own separate form of backup. But as long as you're not worried about that kind of data loss, it's essentially the same thing, because you can just go into iCloud and restore the deleted files.
It's the same reason why it's hard to sell email backup sometimes, because they're like, what's here and it's there. It's same concept. I agree with you. It's sometimes a hard sell. And if they don't understand, I'll never do that. I'll never delete something and then forget about it for 30 days. Okay. But when it happens, you realize that it can.
I mean, when it saves people, it's fantastic. They're no amount of, they would pay anything in retrospect, but yeah.
So speaking of backup, I must say on the Adam Engst show, everybody got to talk about their backup except me. If you go back and listen to it, folks, I was left out. I don't know if there's a little ageism going on here or whatever, but another plug for Carbon Copy Cloner is that actually backs up to my Synology every 4 hours. And I could set it to every hour. So there's a lot of flexibility in that program. That program's amazing. And these little incremental backups that it does just to make sure that it's captured anything in the last 4 hours, typically to a Synology that's running rotational drives. My network's kind of fast, but it's not like a fancy pants network Joe has. They take about like 20 to 30 minutes, but they're running in the background, doesn't slow down my performance. And
when you're podcasting. But
yeah. Every 4 hours and twice
right
during podcasts. Yeah.
As Jerry goes,
yeah, freeze.
There's another plug for that program, and there's so many things that can do for you. And I've got a little SSD drive that I plug it in once in a while. It's in in my desk, and once in a while I plug that in and do a full backup when I think about it.
Yeah.
And I use Time Machine and I use Backblaze. So I got the 4 hour, I got the one in the drawer, I got Time Machine, and I got Backblaze. So, and for me, that helps me sleep at night. Now, that might sound crazy to you. I was surprised, Joe, on that show, how you said you're pretty much, what did you say? You just do Backblaze and
Carbon copy cloner locally to an SSD.
All right. Yeah.
Do you, Jerry, do you sleep with your hard drive under your pillow at night just to make sure you're comfortable?
That's what you mean.
No, but I sleep with my Apple Watch.
Nice.
Yeah, that's supposed to be good, right? You can track all your sleep patterns.
Tracking everything. It's tracking my gross sales for the year. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I actually think I probably should have one more form of backup. It would help with a little bit more peace of mind. I trust Backblaze, I guess, is what it comes down to. I've just used it enough for clients to help them restore, and I know it's working, and a lot of stuff is in cloud storage anyway, et cetera, the arguments. But yeah, it couldn't hurt to have another form. Like you have Time Machine to a different drive would probably be just another nice thing to have. So speaking of Time Machine to an external hard drive, what's your standard practice for setting a client up with an external SSD or hard drive? We use a little G drive, Armor ATD drives, or some similar thing like that. Do you guys enable encryption? Because that's now basically, I think, opt out. It's Apple default is to enable encryption on those external drives. Do you guys do that?
Yeah, in the cases that I do use Time Machine, yes. Some of my clients actually don't. Two things. One, they don't allow an external backup. And sometimes it's security, like someone could walk away with a small drive as opposed to a computer.
Right.
And the other, some of them don't even allow attached storage. But for the ones that we do, encryption is, I think, we're probably scarred from early years of Apple encryption, like the home folder file vault and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
exactly,
it's come a long way.
Yeah, File Vault 1. Yeah, that was a treat.
That was so bad.
What about you, Jerry? Because you have residential clients like I do where this is more relevant than in Sam's case. But
yeah, most of the time, if they were sold a drive from the Apple Store, we'll set it up for them and we'll just leave it at the default. Otherwise, like you had said on a previous show, not that long ago, we just do Backblaze and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm leaning more toward Backblaze as the primary. For clients with external drive backups, I do use encryption. And I think not only is it safer for them in the near term, especially if they're traveling with the drive, or if it's just sitting on a desk and it goes missing, you want to know that it was encrypted. You can save it in the login keychain, no problem. You do have to do the initial configuration and then ideally restart or just eject the drive and have them unplug it and plug it back in so that when it connects to the Mac, you can have it save the password. Otherwise, they're going to just cancel that prompt when it comes up in the future and never have a backup. But you can save it. There's no downside really because the Mac itself already has the data on it. Apple probably should just save that in the keychain automatically. One thing you might try is just set the backup password to the same as the Mac login password, just so that they know what it is, that kind of thing, in case they obviously can't get into their Mac and then they have just the backup drive. You want that password to be an obvious one, but not one that can be easily guessed. And also in the long term, when that drive eventually fails, maybe not that long from now, 2 or 3 years in a lot of cases, you don't want to have to like securely erase the drive or send it in for shredding or otherwise dispose of it. You want to know that if it just gets thrown in the trash like it probably will, that it is already inherently secure because it's been encrypted from the beginning. So that's the other reason to do it is for the long term, where you don't have to have a project later to recommend that they hire someone to, like Jerry, to hit it with an axe or whatever, or On-Site Shredding is a company we have in Connecticut. I don't know if that's like a national brand or what, but they come to your office building and they have a shredder truck, like a truck with a massive industrial strength shredder on it that can actually chew through 2.5-inch drives and 3.5-inch drives and reams of paper and whatnot. So you can do that. Who wants to have to be bothered by that? So better to encrypt it from the beginning.
Have you ever seen those in action, like on the trucks?
Oh,
yeah, it's cool. I think I
it?
saw a video. I haven't seen it in person, but yeah.
Yeah. It picks up the recycling bin that contains paper. Like they just roll it up to the truck, and the truck will pick it up and dump it into the shredding machine and all that. It's pretty wild.
I'm fascinated by it. Sometimes I find myself I'll see on Instagram like these big metal shredders, and they put these big objects in them. I'm like, ooh, look at that. And I'll watch that for a little while.
Like a tricycle or a motor scooter. Yeah,
it's crazy.
I've seen those, yeah. Recently, this came up, and I don't know what triggered it, but I'm a big believer in some sort of an content management system, right? I forget what actually brought me back to an organizational management program other than Daylight. So I still use Daylight, but I used years ago, last time I used it was 6 years, 9 months ago, OmniFocus from the Omni Group. And it's a getting things done kind of app, very much like Things. And Sam, I know you use Monday.com. And I just have recently integrated it back into my workflow of being able to organize projects and keep notes and send emails to it. And I've just gotten back up to speed. I upgraded from the whatever version I had to their latest version. It hasn't really changed all that much over the years, but I really felt like I needed something because Apple Notes was severely lacking. Even though there's some nice features in Apple Notes, you can couple it with the Reminders app, but then you've got another app in there. And something like OmniFocus or Things is a much easier way to get stuff on your radar and not to have projects fall through the cracks. So I just recently got on board, and I was curious to know what both of you guys use. I mean, I guess I've told everyone that Sam uses Monday.com. That's the only thing you use, Sam? Do you use like reminders or notes or anything for your business beyond that?
It's mostly Monday because it integrates all of those pieces for me. Because the biggest problem with reminders was that's for me, so no one else is going to see that. Monday has some cool automations in there that you can build out and say, this is the subscriber of this object, so on this day, alert the subscriber that this needs to be done. And that's really helpful because we were actually having things not get done on time or fall through the cracks or whatever because I would tell somebody and they wouldn't do it. So now it's like right in front of your face, and we review it once a week together.
Now, in truth, you could do that with Daylight. You could delegate and you could have members of your team with Daylight. It's a multi-user system, whereas I think OmniFocus, for instance, I think you can use multiple users on it now, but it was originally designed for this one-to-one relationship. So what do you like? I know you're familiar with Daylight. What do you like better about Monday? It's just like web-driven and it's prettier, maybe?
I don't want to take any business away from you, Jerry. So
no, it's okay. Go ahead. Rip away.
No. Yeah, I found Daylight for me, the task part, as a CRM and stuff, like it's fine, but like the tasks part and stuff like that was just a little clunky for me. I felt like it was an afterthought to Daylight than a main focus of it. Just personal opinion. And
this is true.
Monday's pretty. Monday's nice.
Full disclosure here. The criticism of Daylight that I find is that even though they've improved it over the years and it integrates really nicely with Apple Mail, and now they've introduced the fact that it'll integrate with Outlook, it hasn't really changed very much over the years. The look and feel looks very much like the very early days of Daylight. And I really think they could do with a complete, but I think it would probably be a complete rewrite of the program, and that's why they haven't done it.
Yeah,
you're probably right.
I've used OmniFocus. I used it a number of years ago. I remember when it first came out. Prior to OmniFocus, the Omni Group had an app called Omni Outliner, and someone made some Apple scripts to like make Omni Outliner work like OmniFocus eventually would come out and work. Specifically, like you mentioned, Jerry, the Getting Things Done system, GTD, David Allen. This is like a whole approach to productivity. Merlin Mann was like one of the first kind of promoters of the David Allen system and Getting Things Done. And actually, he was a speaker at one of the Apple channel camps, I think. Apple brought Merlin Mann into. Were you there, Sam? Do you remember this?
I was there.
Yeah, I was there too. It was pretty cool because he was like a celebrity. Like I read his blog like every day. And then like here he is in the room. It was pretty wild. But OmniFocus kind of to me, I haven't opened it in probably longer than it was for you, Jerry, but it was like it showed its roots as an outlining software, like to me. And it wasn't the prettiest thing, but it was like usable, and they do a good job with software in general. But I just found that there were so many little dials and knobs and adjustments and arrows and things that I'd go through it. I'd be adding, okay, this is going to be this time estimate, and this is this area of focus, and it just was there are too many like little extra things to attach to every item on the to-do list. I don't know. I just found it like not appealing. Maybe I just had too much stuff to do and I didn't want to open the software because it was just like confronting me with all the stuff I had to do. But I fell off like using it. And I sometimes wonder, what about all that stuff? I hope I eventually did it all. There's a lot of stuff in that to-do list that I just never. So when you went back to it after 6+ years, did you just select all, Command A, delete? Or what was did you find that you had done most of that stuff at that point? Or
pick up the milk? Yeah, I got the milk.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, and most of the stuff that was in there wasn't much. I deleted it because I was just dipping my toe in the water. They have gotten better over the years. And of course, automation is a big thing, whether you're using Monday or you're using the one you're going to talk about in a moment, Joe. I remember when I don't want to say abandoned it, but stopped using it, was they hired on Sal Soghoian. Sal Soghoian was the actual AppleScript guru over at Apple until Apple they didn't take a backseat to Apple scripting, but it became less important. Sal found employment over at the Omni Group, and he enjoyed that. They have a whole website that just talks specifically about automation that you can input into your apps. The downside is you have to pay up for that. You can use the automations for free, but you have to buy OmniSync or OmniFocus Pro to be able to invoke these automations. They give you an email address so you can attach email to a project just by doing a BCC to your OmniSync server, and it's down. But so they've evolved over the years, and I want to hear what you're using, Joe, ultimately. Sam, I wanted to ask you about Monday.com. One of the things that I really like about any kind of one of these newer systems is quick input. So is there like a keystroke that you can invoke on for Monday where you could do quick input and it throws it on the web, or on your iPhone where you can tap the widget and there's quick input? Let's say you're driving down the highway, in my case, and you're doing a lot more, but something just comes to you when you're in line at the motor vehicle. Is there anything like that for the Monday.com app?
I'm going to say I assume so, but I haven't had a need to like be that quick about it. Usually I'm using Monday on the full site and I'm just like typing away.
That's interesting because I'm an idea man, Sam. I don't know if you know this or not.
I do.
Joe knows this, but I'm kidding. I'm a kidder. But that's sometimes when I'm in the shower, I think of something and the phone gets wet, but that's not good. But I find that to be very helpful. Quick input on the phone. All right, Joe, you've got the floor.
Yeah, no, okay. I think the quick input's great, although I don't use it. Things has that built in. I use the Things app, which is from a company called Cultured Code. I know from my Apple receipts that I looked into recently, I wanted to see when I switched to Things from OmniFocus. And it was, I think like in 2017, maybe something around there.
6 years ago, 9 months.
Yeah, more or less, I think when you stopped using OmniFocus is more or less when I did. And Things, it's just simple. It's great. One thing I did that I really like is I put in like little emojis in all my projects.
Oh. Did we lose Joe?
We did. He's doing a backup. Yeah. Oh my goodness. He'll be... Stand by, folks.
Just exited to the dashboard somehow. I got to turn off the mouse gestures. I think I was trying to click action on something. Yeah, the quick action was leave the chat. Okay.
You're of Italian descent, so it's hard not to gesticulate.
Yeah, totally. So things, I've added emojis to my project so I can quickly see what I'm looking for. I just find that really helpful. At the beginning of every project name there, rather than just linking on a wall of text, I have a little family vacation coming up later this year. I have a little palm tree in front of that name of that project on my list there. And again, this is how I use it. That's not a project per se, but it's where I have a list of things I might like. When do we owe the balance for that? And what's the date and the amount and things like that I don't need to see every day, but I want a reference for that. So the thing to avoid with any of these apps is putting too much into them. So you can be an idea man, like you're describing, Jerry, and you end up with a pile of to-do items that don't actually need to be done. So you have to then maybe go back at least and reclassify them as someday maybe in the GTD system. Let's see, how do I handle that? Yeah, so you can make a task someday maybe so that it just doesn't appear on your like radar. I also have a list that I haven't added anything to lately, and I'm not sure where I got this idea from someone else out there on the web, called said no to. So things I said no to. So I might want
Drugs.
to like, yeah, say exactly.
Just say no.
Yeah, maybe I should call it "Just Say No." Exactly. Yeah, but it's really useful for me because the way my mind works is I might like put something on my list as an idea person and then flesh it out a little bit, think about it, maybe even take step 1 or 2 on there, and then eventually decide, no, I'm not going to do that. And I think to myself, I don't want to just delete it. So the barrier is there where like, I'm going to keep leaving it on my list because I don't like to delete things. But if I can just throw it on a list that I'm never going to look at again, so that I know if I want to do Command F and find, oh yeah, I did a little research on this idea. Maybe, maybe Jerry wants to give this a try, copy and paste, send the info. So I know the info's there. It saves me from having to delete it is the whole point of that. But yeah, I would say be careful with adding things to your list if you're just getting started on something like this, because you can have a lot of noise and then you're missing what you actually need to do. Then there's things that need to be done on a certain deadline that I don't necessarily want to put on my calendar, but I want them in my to-do app, but I need to they're higher priority than all the other things in my to-do app. So I'll put in, I have a tag for regular review, which is like things that regularly occur that I need to do. If I just want to focus on those things, I can just click on that tag. So I have literally like hundreds of items on my today view in the Things app, which means that it's totally useless. But if I click on regular review, I can see the things that I know that I really should do on a regular basis or have to do because there's a deadline, like paying my sales and use tax to Connecticut or whatever. It has to be done every month.
Yeah, so tagging has become more popular, I think, since 6 years and 9 months ago. One of the tags are very valuable. I have a tag called waiting. So if I'm waiting for a client response, I could review those just to see I need to resend an email to a client regarding they didn't answer me on something.
You do. Yeah. You could just rename the waiting to Jerry resend.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I have a question for Jerry. I heard Joe talk about fleshing something out, and Jerry, you're good at these. Is it flesh out or flush out, and what's the reason?
Oh, it is fleshing something out, but I don't know why.
Okay.
But I would have to
take a skeleton and then you add flesh to make it like a person.
Yeah, very well could be.
Lines,
we can look that up live, Sam, if you'd.
Yeah, sure. I know we had this champing versus chomping at the bit.
Champing, yeah.
I know you keep reminding me that it's
flushing out would be like what you do when you don't want to do something. When you don't want to,
you're trying to flush something out. I don't know.
Joe's right. It says here that the phrase is a metaphor that compares adding details to the flesh on a skeleton.
Okay.
Really?
But I don't know the origins.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could find that out on
I
another
enjoy
show.
etymology, thinking about like, why is it called that? Or why might it be called, like before I look it up, it's fun to come up with your own story about it. Yeah.
I have a good book someone gave me called I think it's The Extraordinary Origin of Everyday Things. And it's just like a great book about some of these like phrases that we use or objects that we use in everyday life that have a really interesting origin.
Yeah. Nice.
Don't know how we got here, guys, but that's
I don't.
Sorry.
And this has nothing to do with the origins of words or phrases, but I used to work with a guy, and he was born in Italy, so English was his second language. And he was the king of malapropism, but had no idea what it was. So the malaprops is when you mishear a word, very much like this is really dating myself, Gilda Radner on Saturday Night Live, where she played the little old lady, Emily Latella, where she would do her editorial based on something that she misheard. But this guy was fantastic. He used to, he would, instead of snow squalls, they were snow squirrels. And instead of weeping willows, they were whipping willows, because that made sense to him.
That made sense,
And our unorthodox was Artodux. Just Artodux. We don't know.
How do you spell that?
I think just like it sounds. He was terrific. And I still recount those. This is over 25 years ago. I still recount those to this day. I make reference to them because they're part of my DNA. The malaprops.
That's funny. Good word too, malaprops.
Yeah, and that actually comes from a play. And I don't know the name of the play, but there was a character named Mrs. Malaprop. And she would do this in this play that was like turn of the century or Victorian play or something like that. Malapropisms became that word from that play.
I definitely didn't know that.
Wow.
Mrs. Malaprop.
Few layers deep. Now we're talking about the etymology of malapropism as if
this might describe what you would call meta, Joe, or really meta.
Yeah, this is meta. Yes, exactly. Not in the Facebook sense, though, but in the original sense. Yes.
Yeah. This is just mostly a commentary. I've been dealing with, and I'm sure you guys do, we talked about this on a recent show too, but dealing with other vendors for other things that might do something for a client. We need to interact with them, what have you. I've seen a run of really poor support from other companies. Sometimes I'm finding myself standing up for the customer on their behalf because I'm supposed to be working with them to get something done. It's not getting done on their end. And I just have to play the tough guy and be like, hey, these guys can't do anything. I'm twiddling my thumbs waiting for you to give me information so I can do my job. And it happened 2 or 3 different occasions in the last month to me. So I just thought I'd bring it up. It's just poor support really bothers the heck out of me.
And do you find this like...
Name and shame anybody, Sam? Who you want to drop any name?
Is it like a large company like Frontier?
No, this is, and that's the reason why I probably wouldn't like name drop. It's like smaller companies that do other stuff, and one is a bigger company. And I'm not going to say it anyway. But yeah, these are companies that it's not like you're calling the ISP and they suck, because that's a given, if you will. But these are like small companies that are helping with something technical on their end and just doing a piss poor job of it. Yeah. And not to get too negative, I've just noticed it a lot lately.
Yeah, it's been the theme that I've been bringing to the show for the last few weeks. I told a whole story about Bluehost recently. Speaking of the Frontier, you brought up, somebody mentioned Frontier. Jerry mentioned Frontier. 6 months ago, whatever it was, I had a crazy story about just the saga of dealing with some of these companies where you can't believe how bad it can get before you can actually force them to resolve something for you. I'm talking literally, like you said, be the tough guy. You drag them to the solution, and it just shouldn't be that way. It should be like, I told you what the problem is. Tell me when it's fixed. Why am I calling you every day? This is absurd.
Wasting my time. I hate to even say this, but I expect it from those, again, ISPs, hosting providers, things like that. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a bad day when I have to call them. But I'm a little shocked when I see a smaller company you can name the employees in that company, and they're giving poor support and not knowing what they're doing. I just can't even wrap my head around that. Like, they're going to know your name.
You feel bad, right? You feel bad, like having to be like, you guys are making a terrible mess of this. Like, we know who you are. We know it's these 5 people are responsible for how bad this is going. Yeah, that's a tough spot, man.
But I will say, it does endear you to the client when you do it right and get it done. Because there's this one guy at this one client that we don't really love each other. I think there's no love lost, but we like banded together against this vendor to get something done. And now we're like hitting elbows. Hey, we did it. It endears you to the client in a way if you do the job for them. So there's that part too.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, you're going through it together. And like at the other end of it, it's wow, I'm glad you were there, man. You know,
sometimes I've been in those positions where you say to the client, if you want me to get involved, I can be your GC here and I could play real hardball with them. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, it's an extra fee, but I'll do it.
Right.
No,
And
it's
is it
true.
like
Yeah.
Jerry, is the kind of thing where like once you get the go ahead, there's no turning back. Do you let them know up front? Once you activate this side of me, like you can't just say, never mind, it's all good. Like you're gonna see it through at that point. You're on it. You're gonna dog with a bone, right?
Yeah. What comes to mind was it was a client who was in the woods and they were having really poor internet service and they had to pull a line through the woods, through like dense woods for about a mile. And it was their responsibility because it was their supplied modem. And they were like, we were dropping packets left and right. And finally, it just like really was very hard. I had to lean on them really hard. And finally, the crews came out. It was like this workforce of guys, like crawling all over the property. 8 people came to run this line because it was such a big job. It cost the client nothing, but to get there was such an emotional struggle.
Yeah.
Jeez, a mile through the woods, right? That sounds.
Yeah, from the street to where the house was set back from the property. Yeah, it was a mile throw.
That's wild. Again, it's this kind of situation where these companies might think, I don't want that business. But it's a little different in the case of
the utility.
Utility, exactly. A phone provider. Maybe they're the only game in town and they have to take the work, but like we've talked in a recent show about how sometimes you want to see those red flags as early as possible with considering whether to take on a client, because if you could sometimes retroactively, you realize, man, we spent a whole lot of time that we never billed for. And it was a lot of stress and it wasn't worth, like the relationship wasn't salvageable anyway. And whatever, it was not worth the diminishing returns. So I don't blame, like in some of these cases, like I bet the ISP is making a good decision in theory. Like it's too complicated. We probably should just let them be someone else's problem. But for a utility, you can't always do that. I'm just trying to figure out, like in my head, why do these things go so poorly sometimes? Like it's the ISP wants the client or whatever the company is, they want the clients that are going to be easy to work with, where it's turn on the service and it's all good. They don't want the client where there's noise in the line and they have to troubleshoot what the issue is or whatever the case may be. Maybe there's an analogy there with some of the companies we've been dealing with where there's just really poor service and you have to drag them through this support to get the client the support that they actually need. But if they had their way, the companies might say, call someone else.
I don't know, but the difficulty of dealing with that is part of our job. It's like I said earlier, the offshoot of maybe connecting more closely with your client can help the business relationship too.
A lot of times, even though the vendor is underperforming that you're talking about, Sam, you don't want to stink up the place. I mean, you could, and you know that they're pathetic at this point and they're not doing their job, but do you want to be that guy? Is the client that big for you? Do you want to take it for the team? So that's something you have to weigh too. You can't go to the mat for everybody because you don't want to be an ass all the time, just some of the time. Yeah. Then you get the how did we do email.
Yeah, of course. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Most recently, I was contacted by a client who said that she was having trouble with video conferencing. There was buffering and the client couldn't hear her, couldn't see her, and everything was stopping. We support her in Connecticut, but she has a winter home in Florida. And so we did a remote session. She's on my managed service plan and I connected to her computer and I ran a speed test. And she said she was in this, not a gated community, but a community kind of thing, maybe like for senior housing or something like that, where the internet is supplied to all the units, right?
Yeah.
So before I connected to her, I said, send me a picture of what you've got. So she sent me the standard picture of the white Comcast router that's tall and a very standard looking thing, but was modern and up to date. It wasn't flat. The newer ones are taller than they are wide. And so I connected in and she was getting like 35 megabits down and 17 up. And I'm like, this is bad. There's no wonder. And I said, have you asked them about the speed? And she said, yeah, I called them and they said they connected and everything was normal. And I said, oh, okay. I said, let's do this. Why don't let's go to Amazon. So I went to Amazon. I got her an Ethernet cord, got her a USB-C to Ethernet adapter. So I said, call me tomorrow when that comes in. It comes a next day delivery and I'll help you just connect it. I won't charge you for it. So it arrives the next day and she texts me and I'm supposed to set up a time with her. And she goes, do I plug into the Netgear or do I plug into the Comcast? And I had never been there because it was in Florida. And I replied, why do you have two routers? Where are they? And they were right next to one another.
Oh, man.
And I said, this makes no sense. And then I got on the phone with her. When did you get this Netgear? And she said, we probably got it in 2017. And I said, was that what we were connecting to last night when we did the Wi-Fi test? She said, yes. I said, take that thing, unplug it, take it away from the Comcast router. She takes it out. We did a Wi-Fi test and she was getting 600 megabits.
Oh, man.
And 75 up.
Wow.
And I said, that was your problem. I said, you were connecting to this Netgear product that was probably a security hole at the very least, never been updated, and just a piece of garbage. Yep. But that's the thing. Sometimes you can, like Joe, you've talked about these stories before. You never make assumptions. And you just think she sent me just the one picture. But it wasn't until she got the Ethernet she was confused about which one to plug into.
And when it occurred to her, oh, that other little piece of equipment is a piece of the puzzle. And it's hard to know.
Well, it never really occurred to her.
Exactly.
Yeah, she just figured it was all good.
Sometimes you need those like up close. Joe, you probably have a lot more experience than any of us of this remote stuff. But like sometimes you need that up close shot, like of a model or macro dress. But then you need them to step back and take an overall shot.
And so
what's that over there?
And clients, when you ask them for pictures a lot of times, I don't know if this happens to you, they give you like these really close-up things where they think if we see the word Comcast on there or Netgear, that's going to really help us. Like, Netgear, of course.
Totally. Yeah. And then they send it as like small by email. So then it's like this big. It's this little thumbnail.
Like a post-it.
And you're just like hopeless. It's tough. I've gotten to the point because I try to ask like the question that's going to get to the right solution. And sometimes it's a few questions, but I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, send me some stuff, send me some photos. And if you want to say, this is in the garage, this is tell me where it is, that's great. I start with just send me some stuff and then I'll ask for more clarification because this is all just trying to save them money. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go there. So send me whatever you think will be helpful and we'll go from there because it doesn't matter what you ask for. You get what you guys are saying. It's just like random angles that's not even Wi-Fi related. I think
more
that's
like
a toaster. I don't know what that is. Yeah.
It's more like an art project. Some abstract tilted camera thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Kandinsky, right? They got swatches of colors and things. And we get it all. It's always interesting. We should just send it to each other. Can you make sense of this? Have you seen this before? Yeah. Oh, man. This has been fun talking to you guys again as we wrap up here, and we'll just invite the listeners to check out commandcontrolpower.com for lots more great episodes. You can click on support to join us on Patreon, and you get a whole other catalog of shows there, including ones where we talk even more behind the scenes on a lot of these client frustrations, vendor frustrations, certainly, and even some billable stuff that we get into, where Jerry shares some numbers and Sam and I wave our hands and don't share as many numbers, but it's a lot more actionable behind the scenes information out there. So thank you all for joining us on this show and all the other shows you can find at commandcontrolpower.com. Talk to you next week.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. My Mac is slow. Have you tried restarting? Well, the fans won't blow. Have you tried restarting? But my data is gone. Have you tried restarting? I dropped it